Kia ora, I'm Chelsea Daniels, and this is The Front Page, a daily podcast presented by the New Zealand Herald. The mistletoe's hung, the bells are a-ringing, and all through the malls, Mariah Carey is singing. It's the same old story told year after year of Santa and reindeer and widespread good cheer. But look a bit closer and you might see a crack in the stronghold St. Nick has had since way back. Where once stood a hero, red coat and beard white, a sack on his sleigh promising Christmas delight, now stands a figure towering 6'2" tall, with a coat of green fur, a heart 2 sizes too small. The Grinch who stole Christmas is making a play for the title of hero come this Yuletide day. For poor old St. Nick, this might not end well. And to give us the lowdown, Dr. Lorna Piatti-Farnell. So, Lorna, have you noticed more Grinch presents this year?
I definitely have. I have noticed a lot more Grinch-themed merchandise around in this Christmas season. This has ranged from all sorts, of products, from T-shirts to matching family pajamas, plushes, Christmas tree decorations, very cute Grinch-themed ornaments, and even a lot of food. Tins of chocolates, tins of cookies with the Grinch on them, and of course, food lines for children at a very well-known fast food restaurant. I know here in Auckland, for instance, at a particularly quite exciting new Christmas experience this year, families can choose to have their picture taken either with Santa or the Grinch. So it's not just there, but it's been elevated to the same level of, Christmas iconicity as Santa. You can actually have it taken with both, if anyone is so inclined. So there's definitely been a spike in the ways in which the Grinch has been used for marketing and merchandising purposes this Christmas season, for sure.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because this is where I started my journey, because I got an email from a Christmas photo outfit. I believe they're called Enchanted Christmas in Newmarket.
The very one I was thinking about.
Yeah, yes. And so they give you the option of going with the Santa or the Grinch or both. I emailed them and they said this is the first year they're giving the option. They actually got the idea from the UK. It's really popular over there apparently. And bookings sat at about 30% of Santa, so the Grinch of 30% of Santa when I asked, and groups of adults are actually preferring to book a picture with the Grinch. I mean, in terms of this situation, I've been scratching my head because I too have seen a lot more Grinch presents. I've done a survey amongst all of my friends with kids. They say yes, you're not going insane. And I was trying to think, well, why? Why the Grinch all of a sudden? Have you any idea?
Well, I think there's a certain appeal to the Grinch for quite a few reasons. I think on the one hand, it represents a bit of a cheeky and perhaps counterculture view of Christmas, of all those Christmas traditions that we come to know and love. He's quite the opposite of cheer in a number of ways, of what we expect of the Christmas season. It's quite funny. He puts up a bit of a protest against the over-the-top atmosphere of Christmas and the Christmas spirit overall. So there is definitely something quite appealing about his Grinchiness, because some of us may feel a bit bah humbug about Christmas and how it's so, hyped every year. So there's definitely that appeal as well. But I also think as a figure, when we get down to it, the Grinch is a very relatable character. It's quite lonely, struggles with isolation, it struggles with loneliness, it struggles with having meaningful connections at a time when that season tells us that we must have those meaningful connections. This is the meaning of the season. We live in a very hyper-technological 21st century where a lot of our lives are in the digital world. So the loss of connection is something that I think speaks quite loudly to people. So even though the Grinch, of course, is not about being online and being on the internet, it still has that core idea, that we can get a little bit lonely at Christmas and we can struggle, to make those connections. And I think in the end, this transformation, into an individual who's quite lonely, but comes wants to get, like understand the meaning of Christmas. Again, it's quite relatable. And I think his story is popular precisely because he tackles themes like loneliness, but also the hyper commercialization of Christmas, which is something that, I think some of us have become quite aware of these holidays, and is this push to buy, like and produce presents and do something fantastic. Of course, having said that, there is probably something quite ironic about the fact that the Grinch figure has become so heavily commercialized.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, didn't he say something like, what if Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store? Yet you've got, pajamas and cups and mugs.
Intrinsic to the Grinch story, right? So we see the irony here of the figure having become so commercialized. But of course, also in terms of what is appealing, we must not forget that the Grinch comes from a very beloved Dr. Seuss book, which has been, since 1956. So there's definitely, and all the film and animated adaptations that have come after, of course, and there have been a few. It's humorous, and undoubtedly there is a lot of, for some of us at least, and I put myself in that group, a lot of deep-rooted nostalgia that heightens the appeal of the Grinch figure with the public, undoubtedly.
Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot.
Wrong-o.
The Grinch! I must stop this Christmas from coming. This could change my entire outlook on life.
Really?
No.
Jim Carrey.
Even if we're horribly mangled, there'll be no sad faces on Christmas.
Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Even if I wanted to go, my schedule wouldn't allow it. 4 o'clock, wallow in self-pity. 6:30, dinner with me. I can't cancel that again.
I was surprised to see that it's actually the 25th anniversary of the Jim Carrey adaptation, that film. So I was thinking, well, could that have something to do with why we're seeing him especially so much this year? Or is it just all millennials growing up and having kids and exposing their children, this new generation, to the Grinch?
Oh, it is the end of the 25th anniversary, isn't it? That's come around far too quickly for my liking. But undoubtedly, the Jim Carrey movie definitely had a very generational impact. Like for millennials, like it was the big Grinch narrative of the time. The renewed interest in the Grinch came with that movie. But I don't think the Jim Carrey movie is the only reason why we're witnessing a growth or a resurfacing of popularity of the Grinch in, Christmas merchandise. Certainly the items that I've seen of the Grinch particularly recall the Dr. Seuss illustrations, or even more so the 1966 adaptation, cartoon adaptation, which has become quite iconic over the years. So I think all these different Grinch narratives and all the nostalgia that they brought up at a time where the world is not in the most fantastic place, perhaps. So some of us may turn to nostalgia, like to make us feel a bit better, to share with our family, like if we, people have children and are of that generation where the Grinch, like got a little bit of a boost in the 90s and early 2000s. Certainly this is the right time for the Grinch as a figure to capture the imagination at Christmas.
It does seem quite strange how a Christmas-specific figure has come along and is able to at least compete with Father Christmas at the top of the leaderboard when it comes to fictional or non-fictional.
Wow.
If anyone else is listening,
to say that.
Off the top. I mean, should the Easter Bunny be worried? I know in Australia there was a resurgence of the Easter Bilby at one point because farmers don't like rabbits on their farms and eggs and everything. But the Easter Bilby really didn't, take off, so to speak. Only some Australians of a certain generation probably know who the Easter Bilby is. Do you reckon that there's any other figures or fictional characters out there that could, give others a run for their money?
So we're wondering if the Grinch has indeed stolen Christmas in more ways than one. Well, two-part to this. In spite of the Grinch's popularity that we're seeing this year, this incredible resurgence is everywhere. Yeah, all the nostalgia, all the merchandise. Santa is very much still there. Is still very much in all the merchandise, is in the shop displays, is in the picture opportunities, that we can have, like is in the adverts, is in the Christmas adverts. So I don't quite think Santa, at least, is at a risk of losing his throne as the King of Christmas. As for other figures, well, that remains to be seen. Like I'm not sure the Easter Bunny has enough competition, in popular culture quite yet. Of course, like there are the Christian traditions, like around something, a celebration like Easter that don't necessarily involve the Easter Bunny. So again, we got quite a few offshoots. But as far as Christmas is concerned, it's quite nice to see a little bit of an alternative, different ways, diverse ways of celebrating Christmas, and different Christmas iconographies coming into the foreground that are not necessarily the traditional, narrative that we've been known to. This is a sign that, people are embracing different ways of seeing the world. And I think that is quite pleasing.
Yeah, how do you think Christmas marketing has evolved over the years, and what's kind of stayed the same and what's really different?
Well, I think Christmas marketing, some aspects of it have really changed, has really changed over the years. I think we have moved a little bit away from the traditional, perhaps, product, material-focused campaigns that traditionally, historically used print and broadcast media, like as the primary venue, like to get out there to more contemporary, perhaps emotionally and values-driven marketing that uses a lot more of social media and storytelling to create a connection, like with people, in the end, we're still talking about buying, like we're still talking about purchasing items. But I think that storytelling aspects and that emotional aspects has become a lot more central to marketing than perhaps it has been historically. Now, key factors that might have influenced this, of course, include the rise of online shopping. A lot more people do their shopping online, so we have needed to change, like how we create that connection. The use of digital platforms for targeted advertising, including platforms such as Instagram that are very picture, like emotional focused, like that emotional response. And of course, an evolution in, campaigns that tend to reflect social values a lot more. I think traditionally Christmas marketing has tend to put forward a very still Christian-inspired, family-centric narrative, while we see our Christmas marketing has become, in the digital world, a lot more diverse and a lot more inclusive of different experiences and different situations. And of course, within that, I think there is the understanding, like in the shift that for the majority of people, not all, but for a good portion of the population, Christmas is a secular experience rather than perhaps a Christian one, but still places an emphasis on community, on family, on the importance of coming together and the importance of celebrating. So I think Christmas marketing has taken all those shifts, social and cultural shifts, into account to present us with something that is a lot more focused on experience rather than the product itself that they're selling. Like, what is this going to do for me? On do this to create memories. The idea of creating memories is very, very central, I think, to Christmas marketing. And we see it even with the types of products that have become very central, like to a lot of our Christmas experiences, like taking Christmas photos with the family. That's become one of the big sellers at Christmas, rather than just gifting something, is gifting the experience and gifting memory. So we definitely see that shift, and the emotional storytelling and the message-focused marketing has become very central. But of course, we're not forgetting the material side, the experience, the big windows displays, etc., the lights, the decorations, even in the streets, are still there. So we see, I think, a bit more of a balanced experience with Christmas marketing that takes into account the product, of course, we're still selling, but also puts in the foreground the experience of Christmas and why it's meaningful for people.
It came without weapons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags. He puzzled and buzzed till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more.
When you said that the emotional switch in the ads, immediately made me think of the John Lewis ads in the UK. Yeah, so every year they come out with one, and it's like they're coming out with them every year to see how many more people they can get to cry, really. The one that comes to my mind is the Elton John one, but they're really famous for bringing that loving and caring, and it really is that kind of marketing switch from buy to, what can you do for your family and your friends and everything for Christmas.
Absolutely.
On one hand, I actually have seen a more sustainable approach to Christmas. I actually found myself watching a whole bunch of TikTok videos on how to wrap presents in silk scarves. But on the other hand, I also have seen those videos of influencers with a massive tree with, presents piled up to the ceiling. So there are those two extremes.
For sure.
What do you make of that?
I think absolutely. I've also seen, the pictures with Christmas, the bigger the better, right? Huge Christmas trees going all the way to the ceiling and so many presents that you gotta wonder, what's in all those boxes, et cetera, et cetera. And also a push, I think, for influencers to put forward Christmas products, things like advent calendars, put the emphasis on that materialistic side, which eventually is a little bit of a throwaway experience when it comes to it with all the packaging. But I agree with you that I've also seen a rise in a desire for a more sustainable Christmas with many people. And even we see this on social media, so many videos and so many tips for adopting a more environmentally conscious, ways to reduce waste, or, choosing eco-friendly gifts made with eco-friendly materials. I think there's a lot more consciousness and, desire to engage in that. And of course, even with our Christmas lunches and our Christmas meals, opting for more local and seasonal foods, for the Christmas season. There's definitely been a rise in that, and I've seen it in a lot of different contexts. So this also includes embracing experiences, like we said, over material goods. That is also part of that sustainability, that goes hand in hand with the desire to feel connected to people and look after the planet. I think that is all part of the same narrative. Reusing, using reusable gift wrapping, perhaps a scarf or perhaps just beautiful fabric that can be used, year in and year out. I've also seen several lines of reusable Christmas crackers, Christmas bonbons.
Oh, yes. So have I, actually.
Yes, that you can make yourself every year, and also choose much more meaningful little gifts that you can give, to your friends and family, and be sustainable in the process as well. So there's definitely a conscious effort. And these are just examples of sustainability, becoming part, of how many people think about their daily lives, their interest in the planet, their interest in being environmentally conscious, and also how it goes hand in hand with building memories, building experiences as now a normal part of our Christmas celebrations.
So lastly, Lorna, do you in fact think the Grinch will steal Christmas?
Oh, he's certainly been trying for quite a few years now. I think the Grinch may have come to accept that some parts of Christmas might be his. And, he never turns down an opportunity for bar and humbug, which I think some of us might want to join in a little bit. But I think, like with everything, a little bit of balance makes for a much happier experience at Christmas. And in the end, everyone should do what brings them joy, and do what their hearts desire to have the best experience they can at Christmas.
Thanks so much for joining us, Lorna.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
That's it for this episode of The Front Page. You can read more about today's stories and extensive news coverage at nzherald.co.nz. The Front Page is produced by Jane Yee and Richard Martin, who is also our editor. I'm Chelsea Daniels. Subscribe to The Front Page on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts, and tune in tomorrow for another look behind the headlines.